What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports, a video we probably weren't expecting on filming. When Mets fans went to bed on Tuesday night, they thought the biggest signing of the day was going to be Adam Ottavino coming back on a 2-year deal. Great move for the bullpen, but boy, were they mistaken. In the late hours of the night, if you haven't already heard, Carlos Correa, he rescinded his agreement with the San Francisco Giants on a 13-year deal, $350 million, and signed with the Mets on a 12-year, $315 million contract. So we thought Correa was going to be the face of the franchise for the Giants moving forward. He's now going to play third base for the Mets moving forward.
So before we get into the Mets, I think we have to talk San Francisco. They go from getting a franchise player locked up and a player to build around for the future. Now they don't have that. What does the future hold for them? What do they need to do this offseason to recover here?
I think it's almost out of the picture to recover this offseason. It's a deeper free agent class next offseason. Obviously, their needs might be a little different, but they'll have a lot more money to spend with guys like Brandon Crawford being off the books next year. But speaking of Brandon Crawford, this year he's going to go back to shortstop. He thought he was going to be moving to third base with Correa coming in. He'll stay at shortstop because evaluating the market right now, guys like Elvis Andrus, guys like Gene Segura, Jose Iglesias, they don't necessarily blow you away in terms of what Correa was going to offer you. I think honestly, it's just not the Giants' year. I think they've swung for the fences with Judge and they missed. They swung for the fences with Correa and
Fouled.
they fouled it. They made contact, but yeah, that was it was kind of down the line, just squeaking to the wrong side of the foul pole on that. But yeah, I'm still kind of speechless that this happened. That you feel so good for San Francisco. This is a team that was a dynasty at one point, winning 3 and 5 years from 2010 to 2015 or 2010 to 2014. Sorry. And now it's just, you had that glimpse of hope with 100, with that major league leading 107 win season in 2021. And then, they finished, well outside the wild card race in 2022. And I don't know. It's just, I don't really know how the Giants come back from this.
Okay.
Obviously, I think they've always had the focus that they wanted to pick up 2 outfielders this offseason on top of Jock Peterson. So I think they'll look at guys maybe like an Adam Duvall. Maybe they look at a trade for a guy like Dalton Varsho, signing a guy like Jurickson Profar. Maybe those are the type of guys they look at now, but those are more complementary pieces they would be complementary pieces to a Carlos Correa, and they're not really complementing anyone in San Francisco. The face of that offense is probably going to be Jock Peterson. And when, Jock Peterson or maybe a 36-year-old Brandon Crawford, I don't know. I feel so bad for San Francisco, but at the same time, that's business. If you don't like something that happened on the physical, Carlos Correa and Scott Boras, they are within their rights to say, you know what, we don't want to renegotiate this contract. We think he's fine, and we think that you're misevaluating this, and we're going to go get money elsewhere. So it's within everyone's rights to do what they did, but it sucks that San Francisco, they're the ones that really, really face the harshness of this situation. So
Yeah, of course. Now, have we seen anything like this before?
in baseball, no. The closest equivalent in sports I can think of is can't remember what year it was, but when DeAndre Jordan signed that contract with the Dallas Mavericks and then realized he wanted to go back to the Clippers and kind of took back his agreement with the Mavericks. He ended up going back there a few years later, but that's probably the closest I can think of. But DeAndre Jordan's got nothing on Carlos Correa. No offense to DeAndre Jordan, but Correa is, Hall of Fame potential. So
Yeah.
That's the closest equivalent I can see of recent. Maybe there's another one I'm forgetting, but I certainly can't remember anything in baseball that like a high, $300 million plus contract just being walked away from to take another 300 million plus contract with a juggernaut. So
Yeah. And yeah, the Mets truly are. So let's take a look at their lineup. How do you think they look? Well, obviously great.
yeah, no, the Mets look great. Steve Cohen wins again. The only thing that doesn't look great is all that luxury tax they're going to have to pay. With luxury tax, they're almost at $500 million in payroll salaries that they have to pay. They've paid over $800 million in total just in their signings this year alone in just total contract money. It's just absurd. But when you spend that much, your team's going to look really good. You take a look at their lineup right now. To have an infield of Narvaez behind the plate with Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil on the right side, Carlos Correa now at third with Francisco Lindor at short. That's the best left side in baseball. And then an outfield of Mark Canha, Brandon Nimmo, and Starling Marte. That's a good outfield. And I mean, DH, Dan Vogelbach and Darren Ruff kind of platooning there. That's a solid platoon role there with Thomas Nido, Luis Guillorme on the bench. And Eduardo Escobar is probably the interesting piece in the infield here. Eduardo Escobar was projected to be the third baseman. No one really thought the Mets were interested in the third baseman. They thought maybe they'll look for another outfielder to complement Mark Canha, something like that. They saw the Adam Ottavino signing and said, okay, good, another bullpen piece. Maybe they thought a trade for Carlos Carrasco, which we'll touch on when we get to their pitching. But yeah, I don't think anyone saw a third baseman. So I could see Eduardo Escobar being a popular trade piece. San Francisco might want him, but I don't think that San Francisco is really going to be eager to pick up the phone when Billy Epler calls. So, but I mean, Eduardo Escobar is the guy that maybe he gets some reps at DH. I mean, Francisco Lindor and Carlos Correa have been injured. Obviously, Correa had that issue with his physical, so maybe there is something there. And San Francisco wasn't just paranoid about signing this huge contract. So if Correa goes down, obviously Escobar is going to step in there. So I could see the Mets keeping him. I could also see them dealing him because again, when you're paying almost $500 million, you may want to look to shed a bit of payroll just to get a bit of financial relief. But yeah, Eduardo Escobar is a guy that everyone thought he was going to be starting on one of the best teams in baseball, and now he's just a very valuable looking bench piece. So I think there's going to be near everyday at bats for him. From the DH spot. Maybe they do try to put him in the corner outfield too. Maybe that solves that because I can't see them spending more money on another outfielder. I know we talked about that in our video earlier this week, but now that they signed Correa, I think a platoon left fielder is almost out the window. I don't think Steve Cohen wants to shell out more money. Maybe he does. I didn't think he'd want to shell out another $300 million. So
Yeah, now we'll move on over to their rotation and bullpen. Again, another area of strength for them going into next season.
another area of strength, especially in terms of starting pitching. Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer at the top of your rotation, probably the best 1-2 in baseball right now. Kodai Senga is the real wild card in this. He has ace potential, but his basement is probably the floor for him is probably a five spot. But at a 5-year, $75 million contract, you feel pretty comfortable if he ends up being your five. The stuff is ridiculous. Guys got really nasty breaking stuff, can touch triple digits. So you feel pretty confident with taking a gamble on him as your third starter. Jose Quintana, like we mentioned when we were talking about the Mets being a winner in our offseason video, Jose Quintana keeps the ball in the yard, one of the lowest home runs per nine, really solid left-hander, and really adds that left-handed versatility to that rotation. And Carlos Carrasco, if Carlos Carrasco is your five after the year he had with the Mets, you've got a pretty good rotation. But Carlos Carrasco, they have talked about possibly moving him. He is, in my opinion, a little too good to be a five. When you have a guy like Tyler McGill, who's a very capable starter, a lot younger than Carlos Carrasco, I could see them dealing Carrasco to again, another contending team looking for a number 3 to number 5 starter in that range. I think there's a lot of suitors for him. And I think with bringing in Carlos Correa, the need for financial relief is that much more desired. So again, I think Carlos Carrasco could be on the move. Just like, in the catching situation, they have 3 catchers that could start. And I think James McCann, I didn't mention him, but I would think that he's probably being dealt to another team looking for a veteran backup catcher, moves like that. So I think Carrasco is probably at the top of that list for trades, and Tyler McGill could very well slot into that number 5. And I don't think their rotation diminishes at all with that move. And then in the bullpen, David Peterson's another guy that has starting potential. Eliezer Hernandez can eat up innings too. So if you do want that protection early on, maybe move to a 6-man rotation to protect guys like Verlander and Scherzer, who both went down with injuries late last year. They have that option there. Good mid-relief guys like John Curtis, Drew Smith, Adam Ottavino, and then good late inning guys like Brooks Raley, David Robertson, of course. The move that started all the moves for the Mets, bringing back Edwin Diaz, the best closer in baseball last year. There's no weakness on this team. But I will say this, the Mets have been known to disappoint in the past. You're spending $500 million on this roster. It's World Series or bust for this team. I don't think there is any other outcome that they would be satisfied with. And of course, Mets are some of the most diehard fans. They expect to win every year. They're disappointed a lot, but they expect to win every year. But now the expectation is magnified that much more. So it's a put up or shut up year. It's World Series or anything else is a disappointment. But they put themselves in a position that if you're willing to go through those checks and balances and, pay the consequences of the luxury tax to build a great roster like this, that's what you're allowed to do. And, I got to say hats off to Steve Cohen for putting in a huge investment into this roster, making it better, seeing that this is a roster that is good, but could be so much better. And he's made it so much better.
So obviously this year's championship or bust, but do they have a window within the Verlander and Scherzer contracts to win a couple here?
Oh, absolutely. I think they have to win at least one, but again, every other outcome is disappointing. So I think in terms of Mets expectations, you spend this much money, you should be winning both years. You have Verlander and Scherzer locked up. So I'd say this 2-year is their prime window. After that, they'll have to reevaluate, maybe bring in younger talent. Obviously, if Verlander and Scherzer work out and they're able to pitch longer, I'm sure that the willingness from both parties would be there if there is success to come back and continue pitching. Obviously, Verlander doesn't think he's anywhere near done right now. I'm not sure about Max Scherzer. He is younger than Verlander, so I think that desires would probably be there if he stays healthy and if the Mets have the success that is suitable for an ace caliber pitcher like him. So I definitely think it's a 2-year window here, and then they'll reevaluate. But again, Steve Cohen's been willing to spend money. I think he will continue to spend money in future off seasons as well. Maybe not as much as this off season, because eventually, money's not infinite here. I think he's definitely not losing money making these moves with all the revenue he's going to get back. But yeah, I think 2-year window, that's a safe assumption here to win at least one, but again, probably 2.
Okay, well, there you have it. Definitely the fireworks of the offseason. I don't think we'll see anything like this, not only this year, but in the years to come. So stay tuned. If anything else eventful comes, we will be here to report on it, talk more baseball, talk more hockey, and we'll see you soon.